Have you ever wanted to try hand sewing something, but you didn't know where to start? In this series, we'll show you what needle to use, what stitches are best for what, how to use a thimble, everything you need to know to hand sew. This is Hand Sewing 101. Lately I've been sewing sheer fabrics. I just made a kameez, or a shirt, to wear with my Safavid Persian outfit, and I thought you'd probably enjoy a video about hand sewing sheer things, because there are a couple things that we do differently when we hand sew something sheer than when we hand sew something like burlap. Not that I often sew burlap. So first couple things you need to know is your equipment needs to be a little different, because your fabric looks like this. And that's very, very, very fine. So you want to use a needle that is very, very, very fine. And I use a needle like that. That's a between 10 or 11 or 12 size. It's very small. Those are some John James quilting betweens. John James is a really good brand. These are size 12. They're tiny, 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 tiny. But if you're sewing fine fabrics with a fine thread, you want tiny, 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 tiny. So you can get these. I'm given to understand they're sold in many unnameable big name box stores that sell sewing supplies. So there you go. Get 10, 11, or size 12 betweens. And you want your thread to be thin too, because if you're sewing it with some thick thread, that doesn't work very well. I sewed everything with a size 50, size number 50 thread, like this from Ture. Japanese silk thread. Actually, I sewed mine with King Kame Japanese silk thread, but I don't have any more, so I'm showing you the Ture, which is the same size. And or you could use this from YLI silk thread. This is 100. This is even finer. I don't even know if you could see that on the camera. I'm trying to position it, but it's very, very fine. I think it's single ply as well. Very, very fine. So you want it to be fine because you don't want your seams in your sheer garment to stick out because they have thick thread. But in my demonstration, I will not be using a fine, fine, fine thread and a tiny, tiny needle, because I want you to see things. I will be using this behemoth of a needle, which is some beastly darner that I got in some assorted package of needles that I never use for anything because it's too damn big. And I put buttonhole gimp on the back of it. So that's a polyester, thick polyester thread that you use for buttonholes on a coat. It's really monstrously big thread. So there's the sewing equipment that you need for sewing shears. Also, always have around a pair of scissors, which, you know how to use scissors when you're sewing threads. You just choke up on them here and just open the last little bit and go snip. You don't need any little snips that they sell you. Just take your good old gingers, or whatever they are. These are mondials. Sorry, mondial. Take your good old scissors and hold them like that and use them to cut your threads. Like that. Also, another thing you're going to want to use is a thimble. I like open top tailor's thimbles because they let the top of your finger breathe. But I'll tell you a little secret. I have been hand sewing for so many years that I often don't use a thimble, because when I push from the side of my middle finger, I have a callus there from years and years and years of doing it, so it doesn't even hurt me. So don't bother using a thimble because it gets in the way. And oftentimes, I push with the top of my thumb doing certain stitches, and I have a gorgeous little callus there. So who needs a thimble? But you should use a thimble. And if you've never used a thimble before, or you think it's awkward using a thimble, try to get used to using one, because you will push with the correct finger if it doesn't hurt to do so. And it's very important that you push with the correct finger, because it takes a lot of strain out of sewing if you're doing it properly. So that's the equipment you need to hand sew shears.